Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is 𝗤𝗏𝘆 𝗜𝗀𝗆, and I'm a fellow with the Institute for Digital Transformation. I'm delighted that you're joining us today. And our topic today is not going to be about AI and the impact it's going to have on the universe. It's not going to be on, other things such as security and all these other things we have in technology. But today we're going to focus on ourselves, and we're going to talk about personal transformation. And today I'm delighted to welcome three other women who have all had life-altering experiences like I recently have. And they're each going to come on and introduce themselves. So just a little bit about myself. I'm a fellow with the Institute. I've been a fellow for about a year. I'm a professor at Rutgers University where I teach communications. And I'm the founder and head of a company called Presenting Perfection, which is a communications group that provides customized training to working professionals all across the country. And so today I'm joined by three amazing women, Natalie Levy, Kim Barrett, and Pooja Arora. And first, I'd like to introduce Natalie Levy from She's Independent.
Hi, Natalie Levy. Thanks so much for having me today. Quick background. I'm based in Boulder, Colorado. I run a Women First angel investment group and thrilled to be here, really open about, the things I've been through and I guess personal story, transformation, all of that. And it's really kind of how I show up both personally and professionally these days. So excited to chat more, but I guess at a high level, that's me.
Okay. Welcome, Natalie. Okay, next, Kim Barrett. We can't hear you.
You're on mute.
Yeah. There you go. Still Kim. No. Hey, John, can you help us with this? Pooja, why don't you come on where we're figuring out
Hi, thank you, Catherine, for thinking about having me as part of this panel. So I'm Pooja Arora, and I wear different hats in my life. I'm a public relations professional with an experience working with varied sectors from tech to nonprofit. I'm also an independent researcher, an educator, an environment enthusiast, and perhaps my most rewarding roles would be of a mother and wife. I'm looking forward to a meaningful conversation with the lovely ladies here. Thank you, Catherine.
Oh, of course, you're welcome. All right, Kim, you want to try? No. All right, so I think the best thing is maybe, John, if we could have her maybe pop out and pop back in, that might be the best way to see if the audio works.
I think we have just been hearing her.
I know, seriously. All right, Kim, come back in.
But if anybody's going to have issues, I guess this panel can handle it.
This is such a great point, Natalie. Nothing like we've all been through, needless to say.
Right. No big deal.
Okay, so while Kim is coming back on, so let me talk more about what our focus on today. So myself, Natalie, Pooja, and Kim have all had gut punches handed to us in life. And I think, what I realized when putting this panel together was that what's a gut punch or a hurdle to one person is not necessarily that to the other. But I think in all these cases, it qualifies. Well, I can say everything that you all have been through would be just overwhelming, I think, to most people. All right, Kim, can we hear you now?
Can you hear me now?
We can. All right. Awesome. Welcome to lovely Kim Barrett. Okay, Kim.
I don't know what happened. We were just talking before.
It's all good.
It's okay.
Anyway, by way of introduction, I'm a mom of two young men, a lovely daughter-in-law, and a cute little grandson. I'm also a professional in the legal industry, working as director of legal operations of a global law firm. Finally, I'm a military veteran, having served in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves from 1987 to 1992. My reserve unit was activated for Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm, which is what brought me here today. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation with all of you.
Yeah, Kim, I have to say, you've done 2 tours. It's like drop the mic. Okay. So all right. So now and ladies, I was saying before, feel free to interject, cut each other off in a polite way, of course. Because I think the more real we are, the more that we are just talk. For everybody. So I wrote a blog about what I went through, and I'll start off talking about the gut punch that I got. So in March of this year, I was on the dream trip with my daughter for her high school graduation to the Canary Islands, and somehow picked up strep A toxic shock syndrome, which to everyone listening and to the ladies on the call, it's not the one on the side of the tampon box. It is something that I think is probably worse. So I got back from my trip on a Tuesday, and by Friday, I was in an Uber on my way to the hospital and spent 2 weeks in a medically induced coma. I woke up and had no idea where I was, what had happened. I remembered my name. I remembered that Biden was president, and it turned out the only thing I actually forgot was my iPhone password. But apart from that, I had no idea what had happened. And the very, very short version of my tale of woe is that I then spent from the middle of March till the middle of May in hospitals, and then had to have 2 operations since for some complications from the illness. But I'm okay, and that's the important thing. And health-wise, I'm great, and I'm back to teaching and back doing all the things that I love to do. But this was not something that was supposed to happen, but it did. And so what I've been wrestling with is, how can I, as someone who survived something that most people don't get through, how can I use this experience and this journey as a way to help others? Not in a way to warrant a pity party, not in a way to say, oh, Catherine, how are you? I'm fine. And I'm thrilled that I'm able to say that. And I'm thrilled that I'm able to host this discussion today, because I know of now it's 4 other people that died of exactly what I managed to get through. And so for me, the opportunity to share my story is truly a privilege. The opportunity to have these amazing women on with me to tell their stories is a privilege. And I know what I've decided to do with my gift of life is to try to do more talks like this, to try to inspire others to be more real about the challenges that they faced. And so I'm in January going to start a podcast called Light Through the Trees. And the idea is to talk with other people about hurdles that they've had to overcome in life and how they got through it. And people have been asking me, well, where did the title for the podcast come from? And the reality is, that's what I've been saying a lot to people recently, is that I finally feel like I can see the light through the trees of what was a very, very dense forest. And I think in everything you're going to hear today, we've all had those moments, right? And I know when talking to 𝗏𝗏𝗆𝗏 and kind of recounting what I've been through, that for me, there were 2 paths. One was to either crawl up in a ball and cry over what I'd been through, and the other was just to move on. And that's what I've done. And sure, I've had my days where I've been sad and mopey, but I can finally now, not, I guess 8 months into this, see the light through the trees. And I'm happy that I'm able to say that, and very blessed that I can say that. So Natalie, why don't we start off with what you've been going through and gone through?
Yeah.
And just go ahead.
Yeah. So really open about this stuff. So I'm going to, I guess, give a quick brief, but just want to say, if people want to talk in more detail, or, we can, of course, chat beyond this forum. I gave a really quick intro saying, I run a women's investment group, Allies Welcome, Women First Investment Group. But a lot of my obstacles started as, a younger woman, as a girl, being in advanced math, going through Wall Street, lots of, those Me Too moments, she shouldn't be here, women don't belong, trying to push me into the corner of, just the wife or whatever it was. And by the way, I'm a single woman, so I'm not married. I just turned 40. And by the way, thrilled with life.
Good stuff.
But I basically ran kicking and screaming from finance a few times. I navigated back into it in a really, really intentional and, fulfilling way. You go through tough things, and it can be that really big eye-opening moment of like, well, what do I really want? What are my real values? Or redefine your values. the first of my really big, transitional moments was losing my mother to suicide in January 2019. We also lost my 17-year-old cousin Z a year later. Looked up to me more than anyone else. And so these suicide losses were just such deep, gut-wrenching things. And similar to what kind of Catherine said, it's that moment of you can sit there and curl up in a ball and cry, which, by the way, sometimes you do, and that's okay.
Yes.
But I'd already, started investing and learning about mindfulness, and we'll get into this stuff later. But I found a path that honored them and myself and created headspace and all those things. And so the way that I show up today and the way that I invest in, myself daily and my, this investment group that I've launched, it's just such a rewarding thing that says, wait, I want to transform the way that, both I feel about myself and the way that we show up and the way that other women show up and how they feel about themselves through the work. And so by being so open, I have women that talk to me or people that talk to me about attempted suicides or, people that they've lost that they've never opened up on before. I'm really big on that kind of open dialogue. So yeah, just finding a way to kind of embrace it all. And then I will quickly say, even though this isn't small, but I will say it, I'm now navigating it was like a, really, really tough injury on my leg, skiing, of course, having a great time. So I'm not mad about it. I'm going to get back to close. ACL, MCL, meniscus tears, multiple surgeries, hospitalization for, about 11 days. And basically, can't do sports for a year. And I'm a really athletic person. And so many people, when they heard about it, like you could see them be basically depressed with, hearing it. I've already been through so much that the resilience and everything that I've built around mindset, I've never been, really down about it. I know it sounds crazy to say, but I just feel like at this point I've gone through so much that I have this resilience and this strength where I'm almost thankful the stuff happens to me versus someone else because I can handle it. Anyway, I do a lot of work around, the ongoing, investment to be in a good place. And we're in anniversaries of loss right now in my family, but I'm here and I feel really good. So I'm also thrilled to be able to share and grow from here.
No, and I appreciate what you were saying when you and I talked pre this call today. I remember we were talking about the fact that both of us were both very athletic. Like I was a runner and a tennis player, avid runner every day for 3 decades, and I haven't run since March. And I'm hoping to get back to it by January, which, given that I live in New York, is like, why would you start in the winter?
Yeah.
But I had people when I was like in the hospital say, how are you handling not being active? And I'm like, you know what? I'm just focusing on getting better. Like,
Right.
I'm not like, so, because I know I'll be able to do it again, right? I know I'll get back to that. And if I don't, it's okay. But, I've signed up for a 5K in May. I have tennis starting in January. Like, it's fine. Because I think to your point, like when you've endured so much, you can go further. And I think that's so incredibly important. All right, Kim, you're up next. Let's talk about your past, what you've gone through.
So right out of high school, I joined the Marine Corps. I turned 18 in basic training. Was not ready to go to college right away. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to be in the legal industry, but I grew up with very limited means, and college was just not something that was talked about in my household. So I joined the Marine Corps. Wasn't sure I wanted to fully commit, so I joined the reserves, and never, ever, ever thought that I'd be deployed to war, ever. Fast forward a few years, I have a child. He's 13 months old. We got presidential orders to report to California. I live in New Jersey. We got presidential orders to report to California for desert war training so that our unit could be deployed to Saudi Arabia during Operation Desert Shield. And I was like, this cannot be my life right now. He's 21 years old and looking forward to the rest of my life with my 13-month-old child. I left him with my mom, spent some time training, went to Saudi Arabia for 10 weeks, came back home, he was 18 months old and did not remember who I was. So I had to reestablish that relationship with him. He stayed with my mother, so he became very close to her because at that age, she was his caretaker, so she was his mom. It took a few months for him to really get used to me again. Luckily, at this point, he's 35 years old. He does not remember any of that. He is married now with a son of his own who's just a couple months older than he was when I was deployed. So we have a great relationship now. But I just never, I didn't join the military to go to war. I joined the reserves. I just needed something else to do after high school. This was not in the plans. This was not supposed to happen. This wasn't the way life was supposed to turn out. I did get hurt while I was there. And, it's the Marine Corps. Take 2 aspirin and get back to work.
If they even have them on base, right? Yeah.
Fast forward a couple of decades later, I've had 3 surgeries on my knee because of that injury. But that was life-changing. I came back home. There was no PTSD diagnosis back then. We're talking the early 90s. And, just listening to a car backfire startled me. I was in a war zone where we had to put on gas masks at night because the Scud missiles were flying, and we had air raids and we had to respond, and everyone's walking around with 100 rounds of ammunition and a loaded weapon. And, to live like that for a few months and then to come back home into society where things are sort of normal is an adjustment. I can't begin to imagine people who actually saw combat and had actually experienced that. But that was life-changing, and it changes you.
Yes, it changes you. And I think, someone told me once, or someone said to me once, that no one knows you have a problem unless you tell them.
Yep.
And when you've gone off to war and seen what you've seen, and may back out the whole thing with your son, like I couldn't, and PTSD wasn't a thing back when you were there. Like, again, it was like take 2 aspirin and call me tomorrow kind of thing. I can only imagine what that was like, because everyone else is quote unquote living their normal life, like whatever normal is. And here you've just gotten back from a place where you couldn't sleep. You were constantly in a state of worry. You had people who were kind of oddly wired all around you. I can't even imagine that one.
It was stressful. And like Natalie, I was in a man's world.
Yeah.
There were quite a few people who didn't think I belonged there because I was a woman, and in the Marine Corps, no less.
Yes.
So, there was a lot of misogyny, a lot of it.
Yes. I'm going to go back to that in a second. All right, Pooja, you're up. Talk about your adventures here.
Absolutely. I think I'm already getting goosebumps listening to everyone. And I think when you listen to other people, you just realize that maybe the challenges that you faced are not that, they're not enough. But anyhow, so Catherine, I come from a dysfunctional family, and it wasn't always a supportive environment in the growing up years. There was a lot of emotional strain. And, the journey that I took was not easy, because in my family, although they were supportive in some parts, they were also not supportive in some bits. But my mother told me that, it's no matter what you do, a woman needs to be financially independent so she can manage her life well, and this is important because this can be life changing. If you don't work, then that's like the guiding principle I've had all my life. And I've worked all my life, and I never imagined taking a break because of this factor, because of the fact that I wanted to be independent. But life has its own story. And one of the biggest challenges I faced was relocating from my home country to another country after marriage, and it wasn't just about logistics changing or moving just your bags and coming to a different location, liking the environment. I think it was about finding my place to a completely different work culture, adapting to new job market, adapting to the people, making new friends, understanding how things function. It was overwhelming for me. And I'm currently in Canada, and employers, I would say that I'm still going through that challenge. Employers work only basis the referrals. The CV is, when you send a CV, the next day the AI will reject you. And despite having like 15 years of experience, I was just facing that challenge. And what I've done is I've tried to move along, make new friends, and incredible friends actually. And now I'm volunteering with this incredible organization called Blooming Boulevard, and as a board director, where I work on conservation. I'm also doing independent research, and Catherine, you're already aware of it. I'm writing newsletters, on my favorite theme, public relations. So I am moving on, but these are some challenges that I faced. But if I go back a few years, I think during COVID-19, the pandemic was, I don't know, it was bad for everyone. But then uh, in my family, I think a lot of the members faced mental health issues, and that impacted my work, my life. It was one of the most difficult times, I would say, because if you're facing a physical injury, eating a medicine or cold and cough, eating an aspirin, things like that can be done. But if somebody in your family is facing mental health issues, it's not easy, because they are physically present but mentally they're not even there. So it's a different challenge altogether. But that really helped me to understand that it's important to lean on others, and it's important to take help, to talk, to listen. I think those are things that I learned. But yeah, I would say that self care, like all of you were talking about fitness, while physical fitness is important, mental health is equally important. So those were some of the challenges that I faced. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And Pooja, you bring up a really, really good point on the mental fitness front. And the question I want to pose to all of you, and feel free to chime in and answer however you'd like, is why. So I share my story with people, and the reason that I chose this topic for the digital dialogue was I shared my story at a fellows meeting over the summer, and the agenda for the entire meeting changed because everybody was so blown away by what I had gone through. And I will admit, I didn't expect it to come out. It just kind of did when we were talking, right? So my question for all of you is, why do you think that most people are afraid to share their reality with others? Because I know and I'll admit it, for me, like part of me has thought, well, maybe I should just not talk about this, right? Well, it was significant for me, but I'm getting through it. And so is it something that I want everyone to know about me? Or is it something that I just want to close the door on this chapter of my life with? And it's something that I've struggled with. And what I've realized is it's better to talk about it because it makes it easier than it is to try to close the door on it. And that was a big decision for me, right? So my question for all of you, like I said, is why do you think we as humans struggle with this? And why, most interestingly right now, do the Gen Z and millennials struggle with this? Because I know I teach college, and so many of my students are so afraid to share their reality until someone else does it, and then they talk about it. So I was just curious as to what you all think.
I think people are afraid of being judged. They don't want to look imperfect, especially in this world of perfection on Instagram and other social media outlets. They
I think
don't want.
it's so true. And I made a joke once to somebody, no one ever posts anything on LinkedIn like, "Oh, I got fired. Can you help me find a job?" They'll be like, "Oh, I'm pursuing new opportunities." But no one's
Yes.
ever like, "Oh, I got fired," or "I got." And I would love it if somebody would do that, because I think it would be
Yeah.
so God would get likes and forwards and reposts and all that, because that's somebody being real,
Right.
And I think you're right. Like, we're all such a, oh, life is so happy, wonderful, but it's not.
It's not all the time.
No.
It's not. And I think also some people are afraid of being perceived as selfish. I don't want to talk about me. Let's talk about you. But sharing our stories does help other people, because we can lift other people up.
That's right. That's right.
And allow other people to be more vulnerable so they can heal.
Yes. Yes. Natalie, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I have so many thoughts, and my dog was so excited and barking so simply because she wanted to share. So I muted for a minute, but hopefully it's not too crazy in the background. I think that if you really uncover and know your values, and you've been through something that's so deep, it shakes you to your core, you have the ability and you can find the strength to share, but you almost have had to have either made the choice or genetically be predispositioned to be able to do the thing.
Yes.
And I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think a lot of younger people just haven't gone through that maybe self-discovery. So even if they want to be authentic, they don't really know what it is and they don't know how to be. And so whether it's sharing a story, showing up, really listening, asking yourself, what do I need? I think those are skills that it takes going through some really tough things and, going through a transformation to be able to really do it, even if being authentic is, trendy these days is a term. And the other thing I'll say is, I think it's extremely important to be able to share this stuff. I think every time we share, it's healing. Being able to reclaim that power and say, well, this thing happened, but this is how it shaped me and allowed me to pivot or, do something more powerful and, gain that resilience and gain that new perspective. And so I think it's, again, I hope you can hear me. It's hugely powerful, but it's not easy. And I do think it takes a level of maturity and, self-awareness to even be able to start to do the thing and start to tell it in a way that feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, the mindset is so important, right? I grew up in a household with a handicapped father. He had polio. And what I've always admired about him and still admired about him, he's never complained. He just, and life has gotten, he's in his 80s now, and life has gotten tough being able to move around and all of that. And for a while when I was getting through my thing, I was, they were pushing me around in a wheelchair. And my dad's in a wheelchair. And I have never gained a greater appreciation for my father than when I was in the same situation that he's in. And, so it just gives you perspective. And I think, for some of us, it will, there's some of us, it's easier to be able to talk about this stuff. And again, I think some of it comes from mindset and Natalie, you're saying, some of it comes from just experience and life. Life gives you wisdom that you don't necessarily realize you have until you get into a moment where you're forced to think a lot. And I think it's that thought that really empowers us. And Pooja, your thoughts on this as well? I'm curious.
Yeah, sure. So I just want to give one message to Natalie. I think the dog is also asking for some attention. Any which ways, yeah. Sorry about that. So I think, I have a psychology background, and I'd like to answer that question in that perspective. So all people, or you could say everyone, is made differently. Okay, we come from a different environment, and that's how people try to react. So somebody, I have seen at least somebody who comes from a family of extroverts tends to share much more as compared to people who do not come from a similar background. And I think that coupled with the kind of circumstances a person faces, that also shapes their belief whether they want to share, not share, etc. At least like, for example, I'm pretty outspoken. I like to express what I'm going through, and that helps me heal. Somehow, my husband is not made like that. He's differently made, and he likes to keep it to himself unless and until the things are extremely important. However, both of us are a good pair. So I think those perspectives are also important. There are people who, these days just like to share with an AI chatbot, and they are good. They don't want to share whatever they're going through another human being, and that is, a beauty of AI that's coming up. But again, that completely depends on how one wants to share. It could be by sitting, you could just sit next to a friend and not say anything, and your friend would know that, okay, you're going through something. So I think every to each to its own, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, the other challenge with all this is you can't judge someone if they don't want to talk about what they've been through. And there are some times where you encounter someone says something that triggers a memory or triggers an experience or triggers an emotion. And it's always interesting when you've talked about something that you didn't expect to talk about, but it just kind of, comes out.
Yeah.
So I find this whole thing fascinating. Now, John, you said you have some comments to share with us. Okay, so one of our LinkedIn users, judge and or accountability for movement when at times we don't always know a way out of a particular moment or condition. Yes, we so need a judgment-free space to share. Absolutely. And Derek, love your comment. Thank you, ladies, for your strength and showing your life challenges and superpower of resilience to overcome. I appreciate that. Thank you. Oh my gosh, and Shlomit, thank you for sharing your stories. Very moving, brave, and inspiring. And Nora, beautifully said. Beautifully said. It's all about sharing the human side of ourselves, being authentic and vulnerable all at once. Okay. We know we're awesome. So like, that's all good. And we're also super awesome because we have the strength and the bravery to share these stories today. But something we all have been able to do is go on and be resilient and take, we keep, you get a gut punch, you just kind of move on. Was there ever a moment for any of you where you felt like you were so low? And if so, how did you pull yourself out of it? Okay. I know for me, I'll share since I posed this question. I'm talking. There was a moment in the hospital when I woke up. And after I woke up, I had been intubated for 2 weeks, so I didn't have a voice. So you basically have laryngitis for a while. So I was starting to come out of that. And I was laying in my bed and I was watching, the fourth hour of the Today Show, which is never a good thing to watch, by the way. And I couldn't move in bed. I couldn't move my legs. I could barely sit up. I'll put it like that. And I think for me, that was my low point. But I realized that I could get over it. I could get through it. And I knew that I just had to focus on getting better. And for somebody who, I'm getting a little teary-eyed about this. For somebody who is usually so 24/7 by 365, it was really hard to lay in a hospital bed and not be able to move. And I think I wrote about this in my blog. It was that I was ferociously independent before this whole thing. And there were some days on the hospital bed where the only thing I had to look forward to was when the nurses would come in and help me roll from the right side of the bed to the left side of the bed because I couldn't get out otherwise. And that was really hard. And it was really hard because, like Natalie, like I'm out and about constantly, ski, tennis, run, whatever. And I could barely move. But I gave myself time. And I knew that I could get better. And so that was my low point. But it was, I guess, to Natalie's point before, knowing that I had been through so much in life and having a father who was just so beyond awesome and who has gotten through everything that he has gotten through, I knew I could do it. But as you see the tears rolling down my face, it was not easy. But like I said earlier, I'm okay. No. And I'm more than okay. I'm better. And I guess for me, it was just knowing who I was and knowing and just having the belief and the courage to know that I could get back there that motivated me. Okay, so that's my story. Natalie, you're up.
Yeah. It's an interesting one because the like watermark for low point changes, right? As
Yeah.
you go through different things. So the low point wasn't for me in the hospital when I literally like couldn't get to the bathroom or even the commode. I couldn't even get to the commode of the
I
like,
got you. Yes.
that's the low point. The low point wasn't, being at home and not being able to bring a tea into my room. Like those aren't even my low points. I think it was the first of the really significant things, which was the loss of my mother to suicide, where it was like before the loss and after the loss. And after the loss, it was like everything's changed, right? I don't have a mom, but then there's all these layers to it when it's suicide loss, and it's the, guilt and processing, like all this stuff. And you cry so hard that, when you open your eyes, you have like a white sheen over it because I don't know, the salt, whatever has happened, and I think the lowest it was just kind of like, you don't have any energy, you don't want to eat, you don't want to move, all the things. And then you hopefully have, family and, friends, which I did luckily, and I invested in community and, people to support who could support me and show up. And you just say, I can do the damn thing, right? Whether it's turning on, to Catherine's point of, okay, somebody's going to move me in the bed. Let's turn on the happy light for 10 minutes and like, like that, that's going to be a high point of the day or whatever you want to call it, or, a dog cuddle. But like,
Right.
There's been a lot of lows. I'm really thankful to, I don't have a point to point to and be like, and this was when,
Yeah.
I didn't think I could get up. I'm sure I felt that. And I will be very honest that I think with things like loss and just really bad things that happen to us, I don't think you get over it. And especially with grief, it's, grief is love to me. It's, the loss anniversaries, I keep them alive and I'm happy I do, but it still brings deep sadness at times. And like New Year's is never going to be a holiday that I really enjoy the same way because we lost mom right after and I knew how lonely she was. So it's like, you can have these mixed feelings and you can cry when you're laughing and, all these things, but it's not like, even though I have really good energy and I'm upbeat, it's not like I don't feel deep loss and sadness still. And so I think that's an important part of it, right? Recognizing the journey. But yeah, I definitely have had, lows, but it's knowing that you can get through it and how to invest in and pick yourself up. And to Pooja's point, like it's not just physical health, right? It's mental health. And if I hadn't already invested in those mental tools and understanding even my body and nutrition, and by the way, movement, you don't have to run, like getting up and just doing sun salutations because I know I need to for my body, like that's huge.
Well, yeah. And, not back to me for a second, but back to me for a second. It was that mental health in the hospital that I knew, despite my physical challenges that I was going through, that I'd be able to get through it. All right, Kim, on to you. So you're 20 years old. You're in Saudi Arabia in the middle of a desert with all these random people around you, all who have guns.
Yes.
That must have been pretty scary. And
It was.
I don't know if it was your low point, but talk us through that. And again, where was your low point? How'd you get through it?
That was not my low point. I think the low point was coming back home to no job, no education, no skills. My son didn't recognize me. Dysfunctional home. That was the low point, and not knowing how to get out. I was not aware of how important mental health was back then.
So how'd you do it? I mean, I can't imagine coming home to your baby. We had not, I just talked about this. You're so excited to see, and he doesn't recognize you. Like,
Right. That I mean, I don't know and maybe Pooja, with your psychological background, maybe you can help me answer this, but I don't know what kind of resilience I was able to muster back then, but it immediately just came to me that, like, I have to reestablish this relationship. I didn't get sad about it. I just went into, this is something I have to do. Like, it's time to pivot and make sure that I can reestablish this and reconnect. Um, and I've always had that. Like I said before, I grew up very poor. We lived on public assistance. My family never owned a house. Um, but I always knew back then, like, this can't be it. There's
Right,
something else
right.
I have to do to make a better life for me and my children, and I have. Wasn't easy. There were a lot of low points. There were low points when I went to the supermarket and wrote checks that I knew would bounce, but we had to eat.
Yeah.
You know, those were low points, but you get through it, and once you come out on the other side, you realize that it was hard, but I agree with Natalie, like, once you get through that and life teaches you some lessons, you now have the wherewithal, you have the self-awareness, you have the resilience to get through just about anything. And you learn to take things one day at a time. You learn how to distinguish between the things you can control and what you can't control.
Well, that's right. And I think, something else that someone said to me once is setting little goals, right? Setting little the goals to help get yourself through things, because some of the stuff can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
But just setting small priorities yourself to help you slowly get back to where you want to be, or slowly overcoming a challenge. I know for me has been very helpful on this whole thing. And I think for a lot of us, it has been. All right, Pooja,
Yeah,
your turn.
thank you. So I think I've been listening to both Kim, Natalie, and Catherine, of course, you. I think for me, I was always, growing up years, like I mentioned, was not, they were not very easy. But I knew that, okay, no matter what, I'm going to come out of it. And I'm going to just do something to, change my life. So I think whenever there has been a challenge in my life, it's not easy, it's a low point. Every challenge is different, maybe an enhanced version of the previous one. But I tell myself that I want to lean on someone, who can help me. So it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out to someone you can trust. It's okay to, bother someone, even if they think that, you're just being too much at that point. But, it helps. Leaning on someone really helps at that low point, because you need someone. um, yes, to Catherine, to your point, watching movies, it definitely helps. I think I don't remember the amount of movies I've seen all by myself, sitting alone, just to, you know, calm myself, just to get that happy moment. So all these things really help. And I think my mother always said that, you have to be independent, you have to work. Yes, that helped me achieve my professional accomplishment. But over the years, with the different challenges I faced, I think I realized that while professional accomplishment is good, it's also important to have a balanced life. It's also important to have a good mental health. It's also important to listen to people. And it just takes you back when you see people around you going through a tough time, close to you, facing that mental health issue. It's not easy. I mean, nobody can actually relate to it. And you want to help and you can't help, that feeling is so difficult. uh, and to Kim's point, that, she was taken aback by the fact that her son couldn't recognize her. I mean, that I can't even go through that feeling. It just causes trauma in my head at the moment, because you're so attached to someone, and it's not easy. So I think it's important that, okay, what I've done is that, okay, in my life, okay, I've had these challenges, but this shall pass too. This is the line, this is the thing that I say to myself. and I keep moving on. I keep working on myself, and I feel that, okay, if there's a change that's happening, it's happening because of a reason. It's going to help me in my personal transformation. It's going to make me resilient. It's going to make me more adaptable, and I think mature. I have learned through my journey, through the challenges, and I think that has only made me a better person. And I'm always there for all of you in case you want to share, you want to discuss offline. So I'm always there. Yeah.
Pooja, can I jump in really quick?
Please. Yeah.
Well, first of all, bunch of brilliance from all of you. But one thing you said, which is, reach out to people if you need to. Yes. But I want to add to that. You have to build and invest in a network.
Yes.
For them to be there for you, right? Because if I'm gonna come up with some example. If you're in your your marriage and it's just an insulated just the two of you, and you don't invest in community and friends and these things, when you reach out, they're going to be like, why is this person reaching out? And they don't really have that real empathy or support or emotion. So I'm not saying do it as a selfish thing, but maybe it's selfish. I love investing in community. I love investing in friends. And maybe part of it is because I'm single, but I think the more you invest in and create that community, chosen family, invest in your family, whatever it is, the more they will be there for you.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Natalie. I think it's so important to have that girls' night out. It's so important to just make friends. It's so important to just step out and speak to anybody you feel is a best buddy of yours. It's so important to pick up the phone if they are not available, if they are far distant. So yeah, I totally agree with
and check in with them too, right? Because it is a two-way
thing. Yeah.
So let me just chime in here. This is actually funny. So when I was in my second hospital, the nurses were like, I was never in my room because I had so many friends, not family. I had so many friends coming to see me that there was it was literally a breakfast, lunch, and dinner rotation, right? And some people, like I had one friend that came every day. God bless her, my friend Nancy. She was amazing. And she would come and she wouldn't even ask me how I was feeling. She would just talk about like all the things, all silly things in life. But that's what I needed. And, my husband's reaction when this whole thing happened, he had a text chain of 36 people, right, that he was letting know. The text chain was then getting forwarded and forwarded and forwarded to people from all over my life. So just to build on what you both are saying, friends are so important. And I will say this, I don't think I would have gotten through this without my friends, without my girlfriends.
Yeah.
And my students and my parents, of course, my family, but my gal pals, they have been just absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. Okay, so here's a question for all of us. Positive mindset. We've all had peaks and valleys, and that really is what life is, right? How do you develop a positive mindset? How do you keep a positive mindset? I know for me, it's just reflecting back on what I've gotten through and setting goals and looking back. I always say I appreciate failure more than success, because failure, you stop and think, well, why did it not work out? Whereas success, you just kind of celebrate it and then you move on to the next goal, right? So for all of you, how do you create and maintain your positive mindset?
I think you have to be intentional about it. You have to want it. You have to make it happen. Happiness and positivity doesn't just happen. You have to create that. You have to have a growth mindset. You have to want to be around positive energy. You have to, like Natalie and Pooja said, you have to invest in your community. You need to have positive friends. You need to have people who are going to lift you up when you need to be lifted, and you need to do the same for them. It's an intentional way to live, because if you don't, you will spiral down to a dark hole, and I don't even want to think about what might happen at that point.
Excellent.
You have to intentionally show up and live that way.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it's it really is ongoing work, and I would say if you're doing the work, like the incremental of what you need to be positive, it's digestible. But to Kim's point, right? Like if you don't do the work and you get in that really deep rut or whatever you want to call it, trench, let's not even talk about it. But you have to make the investment. And I think so much is perspective. I think it's investment in mindfulness, gratitude, right? It's here I am, and I can't do all the active stuff, but oh wow, I've stepped up, whether it's my creative art stuff or my dog is cuddling me better. I have some great shows I'm watching, but I also get outside and, get vitamin D. Like it's little things that you can appreciate. I don't need to go across the world to feel like I can have a good day, and I think so much is that attitude and perspective, right? And it's ongoing investment. If I know I need to do somatic work or acupuncture, or whatever it is for maintenance, I do it, right? But it's really ongoing investment in self is how I find in friendships, all those things, but it's how I find I have good energy, right? I do what I need to.
And listening to yourself and giving yourself a break when you need to give yourself a break, and
boundaries, all those things.
Yep. 𝗂𝗏, go ahead.
Yeah, I second Natalie because I think it's so important to just breathe and just take a step back and really think that, okay, what is it that I can do? What are the manageable things that I can do? Taking small steps, processing the situation, doing things that are, priority, which you think you can do one at a time, more manageable tasks, I think, and being kind to yourself. I think it's so important to first be kind to yourself, then uh, you know manage the situation, because I have seen that when you're not kind to yourself, there are times when you just blast out whatever you are going through on another person or maybe to your child, which is not fair to them, right? So it's important to breathe, take a step back, think about what is it that you can do, what are the things that can make you better and feel and transform your life. If a movie makes you feel better, go and watch a movie alone, it's okay. So I think those small steps really matter, and I think it's important to just acknowledge whatever you're going through and move on. Yeah.
One more just real quick, it's living your truth basically. And so I think the way that we all show up, just hearing how you speak in your stories and how do you show up? And if I was in a professional role, for example, that sucked energy out of me, that would drain me.
Yeah.
I can't handle that today. Thankfully, the way I show up both personally and professionally, it energizes me and it's supportive and, does all these amazing things. And I'm not saying everybody should love every part of their job. Like that's not necessarily like achievable, right? Because you need to put, food on the table, but live your truth. And if you're in an environment that's not healthy, make a change.
Yes.
Yes. And I think we've all been in, I know I've had situations like that recently where, again, you have to listen to yourself and you have to let yourself be you. All right. I think we have just a few minutes left. So ladies, what would you say to someone who's listening, who's working through something and having a hard time? What would your words of wisdom be to them? Natalie, go ahead.
Kim came off mute, so I'm gonna.
Oh, Kim, go ahead. Put yourself on the hot seat, Kim. Go ahead.
Yes.
I would just say take one day at a time. You can't solve life's problems in 24 hours. You just can't. It's impossible, and you will stress yourself all the way out if you try. Take it one day at a time, one bite at a time, and work through it slowly and reach out to your community. Control what you can, and the things you can't control, you can't control them.
That's right. So important. Natalie, what about you?
Yeah. First, I think you need to actually face the thing and process, whatever you're going through. I'm not saying do it all at once because, with big things, you might need to spread it, but don't shy away from change and, tough things. Like you do have to process it to get through. There's light at the end of the tunnel, like keep moving through that tunnel, right? It's okay to laugh and cry at the same time, right? Like there's different ways to get through things. The movies that Pooja is talking about, like I'm there for it, right? Like do what you need to do, but get through it and know that you can get through it.
Oh, that's great. And Pooja, what about you?
Yeah, so I would just like to say that change or challenge, it's uncomfortable for everyone. But then what it teaches you is that no matter what, there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. So just keep moving, just be optimistic that, everything is going to be all right. And if you need help, reach out to your community. You can reach out to your family, whoever you trust, just reach out. And don't be shy. Don't think that, what is that person going to think about me, or that person is going to judge me. Don't think about that. Just reach out. I think there's going to be help. Just be kind to yourself. That is what I want to say.
Yeah, and I love what you all said. I think, it's taking that deep breath, stepping out of the box and thinking about, okay, I know I can get through this. How am I going to do it? And really relying on your community. It's okay to talk about your challenges. It's okay to talk about the problems. And it's also okay to talk about the good things. And I think, if we can become a society where we all talk more openly and more freely, like we all have done today, maybe a little tears periodically, everyone's going to be better for it. And I think
I just say we need to celebrate our women, right?
Yes.
We're women
yes,
here.
we do.
And women are judged at every transition. Like, she's a bitch, she's blah, blah, blah. Like, we need to celebrate our women. So
we do.
Women put everyone else first. You need to put yourselves in there and say, what do I need? And then we all need to celebrate each other.
And then not feel guilty about it. All right, everyone, thank you for today. I think the conversation was amazing. And I think we're going to have to continue this at some point. So thank you all for sharing and for showing up and being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Oh,
Thank
pleasure.
you.
For having us, yeah.
Thanks for joining Digital Dialogue. Look for more episodes at noon Eastern Time on the first and third Tuesday of every month. Can't join the live session? You can watch the replay anytime on our YouTube channel.